Hey there, Havenites, and welcome to the Haven Homestead Podcast, where we learn and grow together on our way to living more sustainable lives. My name's Lindsay, and I'll be your host today. It's been a little while since we've posted new episodes. We've been undergoing some changes as a family and a homestead and a business. I'm not going to get into all those changes today, because that's a topic for another episode, but I just wanted to say thank you to all of our loyal listeners. Thank you for sticking with us through our sabbatical. And that really brings us to our topic. Today we're going to debunk the term self-sufficient. Before I get too far into our topic, I want to ask you guys for some feedback. What do our listeners, what do our Havenites want to hear about next? I've got some ideas, and so does Chris. I know I'd like to share some info on women's topics like, plug your ears guys, childbirth and menstruation. Okay, it's safe to unplug. I'd also like to talk about homeschool topics like what a day in the life of a homeschooler looks like, how to choose curriculum, that sort of thing. I'd also like to talk about food, how we eat, nutrition, homestead nutrition. I've got some dietitians that I know that we can interview if you'd like something about that. I'd also like to talk about why I chose not to grow a garden this year. Chris and I went to the Mother Earth News Fair in Albany, Oregon just this past weekend. It was so much fun, guys. So much fun. And we're going to have a discussion about the things that we learned, and we're going to try to interview some of the vendors and presenters that we met, some really cool people that we met there. But the point of this is that I really want to know if there's anything specific that you Havenites are just dying to know. What can we talk about on our podcast that will make your life brighter? If you want to make a suggestion, head on over to our website, www.havenhomestead.com, or visit us on our various social media platforms. The links will be in the show notes. And send us a message. I'd love to hear from you. So let's get back to the topic at hand. As I said before, today we are going to debunk the term self-sufficient. The term self-sufficient means needing no outside help in satisfying one's basic needs, especially with regard to the production of food. So you're probably saying, duh, Lindsay, I already know that. Well, smarty pants, the kid behind you and to the left had a blank look on his face. And besides, I like to break things all the way down, so bear with me. You see, the thing is that when people like us start on this journey, on this path to sustainability, we start by thinking, I'm going to do it all by myself. We want to produce all of our own food, we want to make our own clothes, build our own house, and in general, just do everything on our own. That's a laudable goal. Being able to do things for oneself is empowering in a way that nothing else is. But, and I mean with a big resounding but, it isn't all that it's cracked up to be. While it's important to be independent and responsible, maybe we should be thinking about creating self-sufficient communities and not self-sufficient homesteads. I think self-sufficiency is something that really doesn't scale down well. Having help is important in creating a sustainable homestead, especially if you have a full-time gig away from the farm. Maybe that means having emotional support from friends and family. Maybe that means having physical support from a hired farmhand or a personal assistant, mother's helper, nanny, or maybe you just have family nearby that's involved with you and your homestead on a regular basis. Heck, listening to podcasts like this one and reading books about homesteading, that's all what I would consider outside help. Whatever that external input happens to look like, I believe it is absolutely essential to our success in living sustainable lives. Today I've put together a list of 5 reasons why we need that external input in order to be successful. The first on the list is that creativity doesn't happen in a vacuum. Second, there are only so many hours in a day. Third, validation and emotional support are vital when times get tough, and times will get tough. Fourth, it takes a village to raise well-rounded, responsible adults. Finally, but not least, good help will make progress exponentially faster and more effective. So let's break this down just a little bit further. The first item on my list is creativity doesn't happen in a vacuum. What does that mean? First of all, when I talk about creativity, I am not talking about being an artist or doing arts and crafts. I'm talking about the act of making things. I'm talking about the act of making a life. You know, like taking a hammer and nails and some wood and making a chicken coop. I'm talking about taking some vegetables from the garden, potatoes and peppers and carrots, and throwing them together with some herbs that you grew, making a lovely soup. All of those things, the acts of life, the things that we make, those are all acts of creation. I believe that everyone participates in some act of creation on a regular basis. I also believe that we all possess the inherent ability to create, and I think that's important. But that's a topic for another day. I won't go off on that tangent. My point is that making a life sustainable requires creativity. It's like Steve Jobs once said, quote, "Great things in business are never done by one person. They are done by a team of people," end quote. We need other people and other people's ideas and experiences in order to creatively solve the problems and overcome the challenges, whether they're problems or not, that arise on this journey. For example, we have been dealing with predator problems, and when talking about them with our neighbors, we've been able to come up with solutions based on things that our neighbors are doing, based on ideas they've given us. We've been able to come up with solutions to those problems, and it's been a really good experience. The second item on our list is there aren't enough hours in the day. I know all of you are nodding your heads and agreeing with me. You're saying, totally, if I could just have 2 or 3 more hours each day, I could fill in the blank. Whether you're just starting on this journey to being sustainable or whether you've been on it for a while, you probably have felt this way at some point. I think we all do. There just aren't enough hours to complete all of our projects, learn new skills, and take care of all of the animals, human ones included. To go along with that idea, we only have so much energy each day too. You see, energy and time are finite resources that need to be replenished and nurtured every day. They're not bottomless resources. We can't just go out and do everything and wear ourselves out. We'll get burnt out trying to do it all in one day. When Chris and I moved to our property 6 years ago, I had this romantic idea that we would be able to grow 75% of our own food. I knew that we wouldn't be able to grow enough grain on our property to provide for all the bread and tortillas I'd want to make, but I thought for sure we could do 75%. We were raising rabbits and chickens, and so we'd have eggs, so that's protein, and we figured that if we bred our rabbits so many times, we'd be able to come up with enough meat for us to have, all the meat we were used to eating. I thought, we've got plenty of ground we could grow a garden in, me having little to no experience in gardening. It's funny, at the time I told him 75% and he laughed at me. Now, 6 years later, I know why he laughed. You see, growing a garden and raising animals, processing and preserving food, cooking and cleaning up afterwards, it all takes time and energy, and we just don't have enough time or energy to do it all on our own. For us, that external input looks like neighbors who grow a fabulous market garden. We buy produce from them sometimes to bolster what we've grown ourselves. It could also look like a neighbor with a dairy cow who provides you with raw milk. Whatever it looks like, we need other people to help us fill in the blanks and manage our time wisely, so we can manage our time wisely and make the most of what we have. The third item on our list is validation and emotional support. We really need that, especially when times get tough. And I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Times will get tough. Sometimes we get bogged down in the thick of doing this whole sustainable life thing, and we can't see the forest for the trees. We spend all day, every day, working from sun up to sundown to provide a sustainable life for our families, for ourselves. And it's tiring, it's exhausting, and it's draining. We don't realize how much we are doing and how much we have done, and we only see all that we have left to do. It's discouraging. Sometimes we feel so discouraged that we want to give up, and that is not what we want. Having other people around to remind us of where we've been and what we've done really can give us the confidence that we need in order to keep going. We've had people visit recently who have never been to our farm before, and being able to take them around and show them what the property used to look like and show them all of the things that we have done and are doing is really encouraging, because they say things like, "Wow, you guys do a lot. That's amazing." It really is amazing. And having that ego boost, those compliments and that validation that what we're doing is important and that what we're doing is making a difference can be the difference. It really can be the difference between failure and success. I like giving tours to neighbors and friends for that reason. I suggest that everyone does that at some point on a regular basis so that you can get that validation and emotional support from other people. The next thing I want to talk about today is this idea that it takes a village to raise well-rounded, responsible adults. I know that there has been some political talk in the world recently and people using the idea of it takes a village to forward their own political agendas, but that's not what I want to talk about today. It takes a village to raise a child is an African proverb, an old African proverb that means that an entire community of people must interact with children for those children to experience and grow in a safe and healthy environment. The villagers look out for the children. It does not mean that an entire village is responsible for raising a child or the children of the crowd. And how true that is. We must take responsibility for our own children. We don't get to pass the buck to all of our teachers and political leaders or religious leaders. It's not their responsibility to make sure that our children can read or do math or tie their shoes or be kind to people. It's our responsibility to make sure those things happen. But in a community, in a strong and healthy community, children have the opportunity to learn about the world from different perspectives. In a strong and healthy community, we have other people that help us to look out for and protect our children from dangers that we might not see on our own. We really do need to take responsibility for our children. We have that responsibility to raise them and teach them, provide for them, and love them. But I don't think we should do it on our own. And I really think that the perspective gained from having other people involved with our children is so important for their emotional growth and health. It's so important to see the world from more than one perspective. The last item on my list is that having good help makes progress exponentially faster and more effective. It's this idea that many hands make light work. And it's a proverb, it's a cliche because it's true. We really need more hands helping us sometimes. Chris and I have had times on our farm where we've had no help from outside. It's just been the two of us and the kids. The progress on the farm at that time was so slow. Sometimes it actually came to a grinding halt. There have been other times, too, though, where we've had a ton of external input. We've had woofers or guests or family come out to help us, and we've had to race to keep up with the progress. Work on the homestead will naturally ebb and flow, and it's that natural ebb and flow that makes it easy to recognize the need for good help. Right now we have some pretty incredible outside help, and I really appreciate it. I just want to kind of tell you about some of that so that maybe you can put some of these ideas into practice on your own homestead or in your own life. Right now we have some neighbors renting out the RV spot on our homestead, and they're good for a couple of reasons. They have kids the same age as my kids, and the interaction between the children and between the other adults and the children have provided me as a mother with the opportunity to talk about different situations with my kids that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to talk with them about or teach them about. They've also been hugely helpful with our farm animals. There have been times when the animals have gotten out onto the road. We've got a cow and a couple of goats, and they've gotten onto the road. And our neighbor who's renting the RV spot, they have a lot of experience with farms and farm animals, and they have gone out and brought the animals back in, put them back in the pen, and then told us about it later. And we always tell them, you should tell us when that happens. We can come and make sure, so you don't have to do that. We can take care of it. And they're like, no, we can take care of it. It's not a problem. It's been really helpful to have them around. I also have my cousin staying with me. She was looking for an opportunity to change her life and wanted to come to the West Coast from the East Coast. And she's been kind of my nanny and house support, my personal assistant sometimes, my chauffeur, and that's been really, really helpful. I've been able to get back into podcasting and do some writing, and it's all because she's here helping. We also have friends and neighbors who are interested in the same things that we're interested in this whole homesteading and sustainable living lifestyle. A couple of those friends invited us to go with them to the Mother Earth News Fair this weekend, and we rented a room at the same hotel as them. We walked to the fair together. We separated and went our own ways and got to glean information from different classes, and then we got together at meal times and talked about the things that we learned, and we were able to share the little nuggets of knowledge that we found most useful. And I really think that that's the way that we need to gain knowledge and support is by building a community like that, to have people around us who can help us physically and mentally. It's really the only way to do it. We are surrounded by incredible people and incredible resources, and I just love this feeling of connection. That's why I think that we really need to be focusing on building sustainable, self-sufficient communities. On a small scale, being self-sufficient usually means going without something, simply because you only have enough time or enough skills or enough energy or enough emotional drive to accomplish things at a certain pace. We only have enough time, skill, or emotional drive to accomplish things at a certain pace. If we can't provide for all of those needs, then we really aren't being self-sufficient, are we? It's when we include outside help in the equation and scale this up a little bit that suddenly self-sufficiency becomes truly possible. When we try to live sustainably in isolation, progress can be painfully slow, if there's any progress at all. Sometimes we'll end up doing without some crucial piece of the puzzle just so that we can say, I did it myself. It's not a bad thing to want to do things for yourself. It's just kind of childish and hollow to want to do everything yourself. I remember my daughter as a toddler. Whenever she would learn something new, she would run to Daddy when he got home and tell him, I did it all by myself. Look what I can do. I did it all by myself. That's cute. It's adorable. In fact, it's even admirable for people to want to do things by themselves, for themselves. It's just that there's more. There is more to life than doing things for oneself, and that's why I don't always like the term self-sufficient. Eventually, my daughter learned how to say, I did it all by myself with a little bit of help. I always liked that. Someday, I hope that she'll be able to say, look what so-and-so helped me do, without that little need for self-recognition in there. In closing, I just want to recognize our supporters, all the people that make Haven Homestead possible. And this is a great opportunity for me to put in a little shameless plug. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, or even if it isn't, if you like the show and you want to keep it going, please head on over to patreon.com/Haven Homestead. That's www.patreon.com/Haven Homestead and support the podcast. Besides our podcast supporters, we have so many people that surround us with love and energy and ideas and friendships. We need each other. That's the cold hard truth of the matter is we need each other, and that's a good thing. This has been another episode of the Haven Homestead podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you realize now that self-sufficient on a small scale has been debunked, and I'm such a nerd. Thanks for listening.